Welcome to the second virtual town hall of 2021 held by the members of the Board of County Commissioners. I'm Dylan Blaylock with Clackamas County's Public and Government Affairs Department, and I'll be coordinating the public comments for today's meeting. Starting last year with the onset of the pandemic, the Board of County Commissioners held several digital events in order to hear directly from the public on issues of great importance. County Commissioners will continue to host these town halls through the calendar year on topics of public concern. Today, from the Board of County Commissioners, we have Vice Chair Paul Savas, Commissioner Sonia Fisher, Commissioner Martha Schrader, and Commissioner Mark Scholl. My thanks to all of you for being here. Tonight's topic is housing affordability and homelessness in Clackamas County. First, Vice Chair Savas will provide some opening remarks. Vice Chair Savas.
All right, thank you, Dylan. Welcome, everyone. Thank you all for joining us today. On behalf of the rest of the Board of County Commissioners, I would like to welcome all of you to our first April edition of our virtual town hall series. Chair Tootie Smith could not join us today as she is out of the office this week, but we will relay what we learned and hear tonight to her. Starting last year with the onset of the pandemic, the Board of County Commissioners held several digital events in order to hear directly from the public on issues of great importance. These town halls are one way that commissioners continue to stay directly connected with our residents and stakeholders. Last year, we held 20 digital events, and we will hold at least one every month during 2021. Tonight's topic, affordable housing and homelessness in Clackamas County. We have a keen interest in this matter. For years, Clackamas County has operated under a results-based plan called Performance Clackamas. That plan has 5 strategic priorities under which a county operates. As the board, we set these priorities and their respective goals. Our priority is to ensure safe, healthy, and safe communities. And one goal under that priority, by 2025, 1,500 affordable housing units will be developed. These units will be stratified across area median income, or AMI, which is and ranges. And so tonight we are discussing what is critical to the board. And for tonight's discussion, here's what we'd like to hear about. Given question number one, given that increased homelessness is a rising concern due to the economy, what different kinds of housing is needed throughout our community? And number two, how can Clackamas County work with the community, business partners, and developers to incentivize and create those units? And lastly, I'll note this, we may respond to some of your comments, but mostly we're here to listen and to hear from as many people as possible. If we don't respond to your question or comment, please don't take it as a sign we don't care. We do care. We care, we want to hear from you. So that's the purpose of really this being a listening session. And with that, I'll pass it back to Dylan.
All right, thank you, Vice Chair Savas. I will also add this. The Board of County Commissioners is aware that some attendees tonight may be calling about the draft local implementation plan for supportive housing services. The local implementation plan, or LIP, will guide the way Clackamas County uses the supportive housing services funds. These funds come from the regional metro measure passed last year, 26-210, which raises money for supportive housing services for people experiencing homelessness or at risk of experiencing homelessness. And the draft LIP plan, again, it is a draft, was posted on the county's Housing Authority website last week. To be clear, that plan must first be approved by our Housing Authority Board, which is the county commissioners plus one member of the public, and then, if approved, will move on to a review by the Regional Oversight Committee. That committee is convened by Metro to provide independent and transparent oversight of the regional program. After that, the plan will go to the Metro Council. Clackamas County posted the plan to be as transparent as possible, even though it is a draft. The Housing Authority Board will not meet until next Tuesday, April 13th, to discuss the draft plan. If you are interested in tuning into that discussion, you can check information about it at our policy session page at www.clackamas.us and just look for the BCC page and then the policy session page. Okay, and with that, I'm going to reiterate the questions that Vice Chair Savas just posted or just shared with us to get us started here. Again, given that increased homelessness is a rising concern due to the economy, what different kinds of housing is needed throughout our community, and how can Clackamas County work with the community, business partners, and developers to incentivize and create those units. Tonight, I also have several emails to read from individuals who were not able to make this meeting live. We will end by 7 p.m. at the latest. All right. If any attendees would like to provide a comment, you can do so now by hitting the raise hand button on your Zoom bar. That is at the top or bottom, depending on your device. You can also send an email to be read, if we have enough time, to clackonews@clackamas.us. I see we also do have some phone callers. You can hit *9 if you're on the phone and wish to give a comment. That lets me know that you have a comment and that you've raised your hand. We will ask you to keep your comments to 2 minutes in total, and I will signal when it is time to start ending your comments. Okay, and with that, we are going to go to our first caller. A hand up I see is Kirsten Adkerson. Kirsten Adkerson, you can go ahead and unmute yourself and you'll be on with commissioners. You will have 2 minutes. Kirsten, I see you are still muted. You'll have to unmute yourself if you want to speak. Well, you might be having trouble doing that. So let's go ahead and maybe come back to you. Next up, we'll have Diane Cassidy. Diane Cassidy, if you can unmute yourself. There you go. And that, yep. And you have 2 minutes with commissioners. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Diane Cassidy. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I'm a third-generation apartment owner. I took over operations from my father's over 20 years ago and have been through 2 major recessions, good times and bad, and have suffered just about every disaster one can face in this business. Being a landlord is not for the faint of heart. I now own just 1 property of my own, 75 units in Gladstone. My siblings own apartments in Oregon City. So we're part of the affordable housing that exists in Clackamas County. There are C-class properties. Those are older, well-maintained, but lack very many amenities. My daughter wants to get into the business with me, but I've put her off because I don't think that there's a future for her in Oregon. The political climate has landlords in their sights and under their thumbs. And it isn't just rental housing that's under attack. Every regulation that adds to the cost to produce a unit of housing, whether it's single family or multifamily, has an impact on all housing prices. I understand that in Salem, they're looking at pre-wiring homes for solar and electric cars, making landlords show renters how much they pay for property taxes. All of these regulatory things, every change they want to make adds to the cost. It might be a great idea, but great ideas come with money and somebody's going to be paying for it, and the cost of housing goes up. When government adds regulatory burdens, the market is artificially skewed and housing suppliers make adjustments accordingly, sometimes in ways that make a problem worse. Examples of perverse incentives are everywhere, and most of them are well understood by those of us in the housing industry. It's just the politicians don't want to hear us because they don't like what we have to say.
Diane, that's about 2 minutes. If you can
Okay,
wrap up your
thank you.
comments.
Oh, I just want to finish. My suggestions for you would be to talk to rental housing owners. Talk to your cohorts in Salem and let them know what damage is being done at their end, and put more funds into Section 8 housing rather than building public housing. Clients actually prefer to have a choice rather than to live in a group setting.
Thank you, Diane.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Diane. Appreciate that. Okay, we're going to try, I'm going to go ahead and try Kirsten Adkerson again. Hopefully we can resolve the issue there. Kirsten, if you, oh, I think you just did.
Yes.
Go ahead, you are on for 2 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Kirsten. I am the community-based program manager for Clackamas Women's Services, where we serve people of all genders who have experienced domestic and sexual violence. I've been serving survivors of intimate partner violence, stalking, rape, trafficking, elder abuse for about 10 years now. And prior to that, I was in the military for 4.5 years where I provided medical care. Through my career, I have had the unique opportunity to be with folks in their most desperate and courageous times. People have told me their deepest fears and their greatest needs, some of which I can tangibly help and others I can bear witness to. My whole career, I can say, has been deeply impacted by the housing crisis we face. Making plans with survivors to live in their cars rather than return home, safety planning around how to keep safe or how to sleep during the day outside so they can be awake to protect themselves during the night in their tent, and navigating the deep effects of trauma while also checking the weather to see if it is technically cold enough for the winter warming shelters to be open. There are many difficult aspects to this job, but one of the hardest ones is knowing that these examples don't have to be part of helping survivors or victims. We as a community can show our survivors we care about them, that we value their safety, and we know that they deserve better, that they don't deserve the harm being wreaked against them. That on the list of things that they have to worry about, like their kids' emotional safety, whether their boss will understand them needing to miss work to seek medical care, or if their partner will out them to their family if they do choose to leave, that whether or not they have access to a safe place to sleep is not one of them. That the safety nets we as a community provide dignity and care to our neighbors. That these are tangible ways we say they are not alone. If we do not invest in these things and don't engage in the nuance of survivors' lived experiences, we echo what they are told already, that no one cares about them, people won't believe them, that they can't make it on their own, that they don't deserve better, and they in fact deserve worse, that something is broken in them, et cetera, et cetera.
Kirsten, we're getting on 2 minutes, so if you can wrap up your comments, please.
Thank you so much. I need the community to invest in empathy rather than trying to find those who actually deserve. I need people to stop trying to find victims to help and instead make an environment that stops making victims, as well as an environment where survivors feel safe to share what they need. I need us to invest in housing.
Thank you, Kirsten.
Survivor renters' rights. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Dylan, can you please, you have posted in the chat. So can the audience see the questions in the chat?
Yes.
Okay, so I just want to bring everyone back to our goal here tonight. I mean, I appreciate those comments. Thank you, Kirsten. But the questions here are related to housing, and I think there is a relationship. But I do appreciate those comments. But thank you, and continue, Dylan.
Very good. I'm going to go ahead and switch to an email that we have received, the first email, because a lot of people couldn't be here tonight, but they wanted to go ahead and relay some. Hello, County Commissioners. This is from Eugene in Milwaukee. I would like to assure you the homelessness situation in Clackamas County will not improve without the county, city, and associated stakeholders demonstrating a shared commitment to act. It appears that spaces, actual locations in Clackamas County where a transitional shelter or low-income housing could be placed, always are scarce and often found objectionable to be cited by neighboring businesses and residents of nearby homes. Why is that? Is the need for safe places for homeless individuals and families to sleep a lesser priority for that population than for those who can afford a mortgage or easily pay rent? I would offer the need is the same for both, but the equity is greatly different. Just as every human being needs water, food, clothing, medical, and mental health access to thrive, so does every individual or family need a safe place to call home. Thank you. Again, that was Eugene in Milwaukee. All right, and we'll go back to one of our Zoom callers. Next up, I see a hand raised from Jane Miramontes Somerville. I'm sorry if I have mispronounced that. Jane, yep, I see you've unmuted yourself. Go ahead, you have 2 minutes.
Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Cool. Hi, my name is Jane Miramontes Somerville, and I also, like Kirsten, work at Clackamas Women's Services, where we support survivors fleeing domestic violence, sexual violence, elder abuse, and stalking. We wanted to share why safe and affordable housing is essential for the ongoing safety of our survivors. We currently have 229 households that we have screened through the Coordinated Housing Access and are on our waiting list for safe and affordable housing options. These participants, adults, youth, and children that we serve are amazing, strong, and resilient people that understand far too deeply what it takes to survive. But as our wait list grows and the housing crisis continues in our state, they need the whole community to prioritize the health and safety of victims and survivors with safe and affordable housing. We are so proud that we were able to assist 74 households and 156 children with COVID rent relief at the end of 2020. We were also able to serve 41 households and 70 children with longer term housing subsidies, but it's not enough. I have answered countless calls from survivors who know exactly what they need to be safe. They need their own homes where they can live their lives free of violence. They need to have their own resources so that they are no longer relying on the financial and physical resources of someone who is hurting them. Sorry, I lost my. Each of these calls end in heartbreak when I have to tell them that the simple thing they need, an affordable home of their own, isn't available to them and won't be for years. For many survivors, the choice is between living with a violent person or being homeless, and that decision can't wait. While there have been moments in the past year when our community has a great deal of resources for people in need, there have also been periods with no resources available, often starting or ending abruptly. During these time, outreach efforts to the community at large have continued and led to challenges of inconsistency and potential damage to the community trust in local agencies as community members receive information about available resources and then find it is no longer available when they need it.
Jane, that's been 2 minutes, so if you could wrap up your comments.
Yep. We need more affordable housing in Clackamas County now. That means increasing the supply and also increasing the supports that allow people to access this resource. Thank you so much for your time.
All right.
Oh, my goodness.
Thank you very much, Jane. Next, we're going to go over to, it looks like Paul Edgar. Paul Edgar, you
Hey,
are...
Dylan.
Oh, yes.
Could I-
Oh, yes.
I chime in here real quick.
Yes, please do.
Just for Kirsten and for Jane, if after you could chime in with me regarding how what you've talked about is COVID related, because we are going to be looking at a direct allocation of, Commissioner Schrader, correct me if I'm wrong, $81.5 million for COVID relief. And really understanding, because your testimony was so compelling regarding what survivors go through. And during this time of COVID, I can only imagine that those needs are exacerbated. If you could get back to us after this session and with some information, that would be very helpful as we move forward and decide how those resources will be allocated. Thank you. Sorry, Dylan, I just couldn't let them
Nope.
go away without asking for that extra bit of information.
Nope, that's very good. My fault, Commissioner. I didn't see your hand I didn't see your hand in the corner with raised. And if any commissioner wants to go ahead and of course cut in, please do. It's your town hall. I want you guys to be able to comment, of course. Okay, Paul Edgar, my apologies. Paul, go ahead and unmute yourself, and you have 2 minutes with Clackamas County Commissioners.
I'm Paul Edgar. I've been active in homeless issues and veterans and other areas. What we need is a place. We need multiple places where we can create shelters and bring people in. This is almost a legal reality, but we also need affordable housing, and what we're creating is not affordable. And I would propose there are two quality types of affordable options that we have not been using. One is tiny houses, and I sent an email in trying to outline a tiny house configuration that was 10 by 20. And the reason for that was to stay under the 200 square feet to prevent SDC fees and a lot of other impact fees that are associated with creating bigger dwelling units. Also, we need to do them in cluster units where we create cluster communities. We can do that also with manufactured homes. And if we have a site, one of the most critical areas, we can build or have delivered 800 square foot brand new manufactured homes for $45,000 a dwelling unit. Set up, toilets, everything, first class. And you could buy these in quantities. So manufactured home parks are an excellent solution. Compare that to spending $300,000 on average to build HUD Section 8 housing. So we can take both federal or state funds and create this funding model to start creating, put the infrastructure in. Make sure, you know how expensive it was to put the infrastructure in for the veteran village. Now we could take that parcel right to the left of the veteran village that's owned by Clackamas County right now and create on that parcel a manufactured home park, or we could create a homeless shelter, or where we take one step above. So we need to create multiple steps of housing from shelter to above the shelter to semi-permanent housing and to the next into more of a permanent housing setting.
Paul,
But
that's Paul, you've got about 2 minutes now. So if you could wrap up your comments, please.
But by building up and creating cluster communities, we can do effective outreach in a congregate care mindset of outreach. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd just like to just put something out there for the group to hear on this topic. So we have, and Mr. Edgar touched on a piece of that. It's really about the space or the land and the opportunity, because that really creates the opportunity. And we have, as far as the urban counties in the metro region, we have the least of that available in Clackamas County. So that actually creates a higher price due to those market influences for every square foot of land. So by ideally working on areas like the Sunrise Corridor to the east of 152nd or so, we can really create a lot more housing opportunities, because there'll be a lot of land available, a lot more land available than there currently is today, but it's currently waiting for the infrastructure to build out there. So that's our key. And I think hopefully with we can relieve some market pressures by expanding that buildable housing land availability. Thank you.
All right. Excellent. Thank you for that, Vice Chair Savas. I also am just going to share my screen real quickly because the Veterans Village was referenced, and I want everybody on the call to know about what that is. If you go to clackamas.us/transitional housing, you can see the details of the Veterans Village project, which I believe opened 2 years ago now, maybe 2.5, maybe more. I will also go ahead and put the link in the chat for anybody who is interested in finding out more about that. Thank you very much for that, Paul Edgar. Okay, next we are going to go to, my apologies if I mispronounce it, I'm going to say Jiraj Sinj. Jiraj Sinj. If you can, there you go. You can unmute yourself. There we go. Yep. And you have 2 minutes.
Thanks. So greetings, Vice Chair Savas and County Commissioners. Clackamas County has an historic opportunity to end long-term homelessness. Black, Indigenous, and people of color experience homelessness at much higher rates than white people in our region, and supporting the local implementation plan for the Metro Supportive Services levy was designed to address this racial inequality and injustice. My name is Jayraj Singh, and I am the Clackamas County Chapter Director for Unite Oregon, a statewide social justice nonprofit led by immigrants, refugees, and people of color. I've been able to conduct several focus groups within the county to discuss housing systems and services, and have especially heard from our housing insecure communities of color. Community members and leaders in Clackamas County want to know what you are going to say and do to support communities of color who are housing insecure, houseless, and homeless. Addressing the homelessness crisis is about systems and processes just as much as it's about building safe, healthy, and affordable housing. Many of our immigrant families don't do well in micro homes and micro studios because they live with multi-generational families. So there needs to be a more comprehensive and a holistic approach to addressing this issue, and we need to center our most vulnerable Black, Indigenous, and communities of color who are experts at addressing this. My question to you all is, will you reach out to, resource, and fund culturally specific and intercultural community-based organizations that can increase language capacity to our supportive housing systems, provide more trauma-informed care and safety for our community? I encourage you all to please listen to and reach out to our Black, Indigenous, and communities of color who are housing insecure in Clackamas County. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Shiraj. My apologies for the mispronunciation of your last name. Okay. Let's see. Next, I'll go ahead and go to another one of the emails we received ahead of time. This one is from Mary Z. Thank you for holding this hearing on housing and homelessness. In my estimation, it is the most important issue facing residents of Clackamas County today. I was with the MACG group Chair Smith met with earlier in March. I see other familiar faces on this board too. Today, I would share my support for the Hillside Housing Project. I have attended the open houses and shared my feelings with those working on the Hillside project since it started. Last week, I attended a hearing for the City of Milwaukee Planning Commission so they could learn and make a decision to accept this proposal. I'm happy to report, as you may know, that they did accept the concept plan. I think this project, which revamps and adds to the available housing on 32nd Street in Milwaukee, is critical as it begins to expand the low-income housing that is so desperately needed in our county. I know there is other county land which will be used in a similar manner. I just hope that work can begin soon and not have to wait the 7 years it may take for this project to be completed. I would compliment the Housing Authority and the consultants who designed and worked on this project. I think they were diligent with their efforts to include the neighbors, and this is always critical if a housing project of this kind is to be successful. I urge you to support the work of the Housing Authority as they move forward with their efforts to provide low-income housing for the residents of the county. Again, that is from Mary Z. All right. And with that, we will go to Al Scott. Al, if you could go ahead and unmute yourself. Looking for Al Scott. Somebody, there we go.
Yes, thank you.
Great.
Thank
you.
you.
Go ahead. You have 2 minutes with Clackamas County Commissioners. Thank you.
Thank you for the time. What you'd ask specifically as far as what type of different kinds of housing is needed. I know the gentleman from the Veterans group there had some very good suggestions. I just wrote down temporary housing with some social workers as far as to help, because many of the homeless do have some very special social needs. And as far as it's hard to get all the social services together with those type people. One thing, accessory dwelling units could come along and help some affordable housing. I know a few years ago when we put a accessory dwelling unit for my mother-in-law and her sister, we paid like $12,000 in fees. If they could walk up the stairs, they could have stayed inside our house, been in our house. But we had to pay $12,000 in system development charges. That wasn't even all of them, because we were waived because of the size the school district fee. And it was just ridiculous fees just for letting my mother-in-law and them live here. Section 8 voucher, I do believe in those. It gives the low-income people a freedom of choice of where they want to live, gives them an opportunity. How we can go about trying to find affordable housing, single-family housing, I don't know if there is a way with the increased price of lots. $175,000 for a lot. How can you build an affordable house? You could expand the urban growth boundary. You could put 32 years ago, my first house we purchased here was, I think, almost $49,000 for a 3-bedroom, 1-bath house. You know, $49,000 was affordable. $420,000, who, you know, how many people can truly afford it? Interest rates will be going up eventually, and that will be huge. I thought, how can you help support it? Tax credits, reduce system development charges for affordable housing. If you could waive those, that would help. If you had limits of what, you know, I don't know what the fee is on for a $500,000, $600,000 house versus if you're trying to build $350,000 house.
Al,
what the difference?
Al, that's 2 minutes if you want to wrap up your comment.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate being able to give the input.
All right, thank you. Okay, next we will go to Heather Riggs. Heather, you are on with Clackamas County Commissioners. You can unmute yourself. Very good. And you have 2 minutes. Thank you.
Good evening, friends. This is Pastor Heather Riggs. I know that some of you know me pretty well. I'm pastor of Oak Grove United Methodist Church, as well as a member of the Clackamas cohort of the 11 Land and Housing Group. So to answer question number one, we need all of it. We need all the different types of housing. We just don't have enough. And there's definitely a place for market rate, but especially a great need for affordable housing and for supportive housing. And while we're on that topic, some of the social workers that the county is contracting with right now are feeling frustrated that their payments for the services they are rendering are being held up or held hostage upon waiting. They won't pay until they have received all of the various paperwork, by which they mean like, regular updates. So that becomes a problem for people to pay their staff. So I just wanted to let you know that's happening. The other factor, the other question, number two, is how? Well, one of those ways is to loosen up some of the zoning restrictions so that those of us in faith communities who have land that we would like to be able to use for affordable housing, truly affordable housing, so that people can have places that they can afford at $15 an hour, or that they can afford if they are living on nothing but Social Security. Then there needs to be some loosening up of those zoning regulations, because I appreciate all the help that various commissioners have offered me, but it's nowhere near easy to navigate getting those zonings changed. And the more public input we have to go through, the more time there is for people to get riled up and worried over who's going to be in that housing, which is kind of a ridiculous question. Because
Heather, I'm sorry, we're getting on 2 minutes now. If you can, we'll wrap up.
All right. So I'm just saying, don't forget about us. We want to build affordable housing, and everything is needed. So please think flexibly, find ways to let the church be the church.
All right. I see Commissioner Fisher, you have your hand up.
Yeah, just a thought. I just wanted to flag this for my commissioners. We have had a housing emergency declaration that has been declared to deal with this issue. So I think this is something that we can bring to our administrator to ask what regulations can be lessened when we are dealing with this crisis at this time. And maybe we want to bring this particular issue that Heather has brought to us up on our next Tuesday issue session. Does that sound like a good idea?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah,
Thank you. Thank you, Pastor Riggs, for bringing this to our attention so articulately. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, I just want to thank Pastor Riggs for reaching out to us before even today. And we have tried with our staff to find a way to help Pastor Riggs, if she chooses to go, to develop the property that she has in the back for the purposes she wants. And some of our restrictions are state law, and some of those are not. I think a lot of the challenges really are economic ones, more than anything else. So look forward to our conversation in the future. And frankly, I think we're meeting tomorrow, I believe, too. So thank you, and good to see you again.
Thank you very much, Heather, Pastor Riggs. Okay, with that, we will go to, it's either going to be Nina or Nina Alter, one of those, Nina or Nina. If you can go ahead and unmute yourself, and you'll have 2 minutes with Clackamas County Commissioners.
It's Nina, but thank you very much.
Yeah.
Hello, commissioners. This past Monday night, I attended Sandy City Council's working Zoom session to discuss homelessness in Sandy. There was a lot of us and them, and to be honest, that was very hard to hear. For 2 years, my own mother was homeless. My mother has a master's degree. She has a career, and she also has bipolar. I learned a lot from my mother's experience. I've also worked with homeless youth in 2 after-school programs. The trauma and damage of homelessness is real. It can take years to dissipate if it ever dissipates. My mom tried the shelter system. She was terrified. There was open sex among residents, schizophrenics in crisis, and theft was rampant. Women's shelters, forget about it. She was 70, and women with small children are prioritized. And my mother was too ashamed to tell her 2 adult children that she was homeless, so she just kind of sucked it up. Where last night was exciting, however, was getting to hear from Bill Smith, Clackamas County Deputy DA, about some of the phenomenal things happening in Clackamas County. I was both surprised and felt a lot of pride to be a resident here. A bright, opportune, and missing piece, however, was what seems like a real keystone to transitioning into permanent housing for folks. Permanent housing. Housing First is a modern, exciting approach to treating homelessness. What is Housing First? It's a focus on helping individuals and families access and sustain permanent rental housing as quickly as possible. It is tenancy based upon provisions of a standard lease agreement and not on service participation or clients' compliance on well-intentioned accountability measures. Clackamas County has those measures already between the LEAD program, community court, and so much else of what Bill was talking about. A variety of services are available to promote housing stability and individual well-being on an as-needed and voluntary basis through those programs. But when individuals do not have a place to live, do not have a place to stay warm, and do not have private housing, it is difficult. I lived in San Francisco for 25 years.
Nina, that's 2 minutes if you can wrap up, please.
Oh, I just want to say I've seen multiple failed approaches to homelessness. Housing First is by far the most promising thing I've seen, and I would love to see Clackamas County work with trying a Housing First approach. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Fisher, I'm sorry, is your hand up for this comment or is it just still up from before? Okay, great. Sorry, I just missed that from before. Great. Okay, next we will go to another email that we received. We still have hands up that want to give a comment, and that's great. If you have a comment to give, please go ahead and hit the raise hand function on Zoom. Again, if you're on the phone, you can hit *9 and it lets me know. We'll go to one of the emails real quickly though first. From Ellen B. in Gladstone. Good evening, commissioners. I serve in several organizations that support or advocate for people who are houseless or at risk of houselessness, including MACG, Clackamas Land and Housing Coalition, and the Clackamas Service Center. At my church, the King of Kings Lutheran on Thiessen Road, I have encountered houseless people who have come in seeking shelter for the night. Recently, a houseless mother and her 2 children stood begging on the side of the road near the church. I deliver food boxes to people who are living paycheck to paycheck to feed their families and pay the rent. And suddenly, with the advent of the COVID-19 shutdown, there was no paycheck and living became even more precarious. Other people receiving food assistance are those who are houseless but are temporarily supported by the county. This has given people time to take a breath and focus on positive ways to move forward out of houselessness. There are no year-round shelters in Clackamas County. The wildfire and ice storm emergencies have underscored the need for emergency shelter and resources for all the vulnerable population, including those chronically unhoused. It is promising that there are several bills making their way through the state legislature that would support faith communities and nonprofits to leverage their space for creative solutions for housing. I am supporting House Bill 2006 and House Bill 2008 and encourage you to do the same. In my 1970s built middle-class neighborhood, houses are selling for near $500,000. These prices make housing unobtainable for many, especially for those without current home equity, often young families or those who are people of color. A robust, many-pronged plan is needed to create equal access to shelter, both rental housing and home ownership in Clackamas County. I urge you to reach out to the Clackamas Service Center to include in this town hall the voices of those currently unhoused or at risk of houselessness for a more well-rounded picture. Thank you for your attention. Again, that is from Ellen B. in Gladstone. All right. And with that, we will go over to Michelle Vinker. Michelle Vinker, if you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hello, commissioners. My name is Michelle Vinker, and I'm the Executive Director for NAMI Clackamas. And as you already know, a disproportionate number of our homeless and housing unstable population live with substance use or mental health issues. They may not all recognize, for various reasons, that those things are playing a part in their current unhoused situation or identify with having an issue at all. Housing is the number one unmet need that people who come to us have, and in most cases, we are not able to help them. Individuals with mental health issues who are homeless cannot maintain consistent med management for obvious reasons and cannot consistently access the services and programs they need to reach recovery. And recovery is possible for the vast majority of them. If we're going to reach zero homelessness, we are going to have to figure out how to manage places that are inhabited by people who struggle with issues that are completely different than those that many of us struggle with, and whose reality may be different than ours. We are going to have to be successful. We are going to need to be able to offer services where and when people are ready for them, and find ways to continue housing them even if they are not. And the housing first model is one of those. And we are going to have to figure out how to keep them and everyone else where they live safe. My daughter struggles with mental health and addiction issues. In one of the places she lived, when she and her boyfriend relapsed, the in-house service providers were able to talk to them about the consequences, offer support on site, and what they needed in order to continue living there. Since it was early in their relapse, they were able to follow through and live very successfully there for many years. It was not until they moved into another Section 8 project where they did not have that kind of services and who had a strict policy to evict anyone using certain drugs that they were unable to maintain housing. Unfortunately, it also led to her boyfriend getting involved with law enforcement, and right now we don't know what has become of him. It is only through my personal advocacy and tenacity that Tessa is now housed, and I believe that her mental health and maybe her physical health would be much better if the services she received at Shea and Me would have been available in her next housing. Which brings me to two other points. There needs to be more housing available for couples with mental health issues. Couples. Living with either issue does not mean that you do not want or are incapable of having relationships just like the rest of us, and the inability to live together leads many of them to choose houselessness. The reason my daughter and her boyfriend moved is so that they could have an apartment together. The other thing that is needed is some sort of ability to address the fact that too many low-income folks are vulnerable and become prey to drug dealers and other disreputable individuals who know how to find them and exploit them in our housing projects. How do we keep those people away from our housing? We do not do a very good job of it right now. How are we going to do it when we have even more housing? It needs to be considered. When my daughter was told that she could no longer allow houseless individuals to live with her in her room at a residential treatment center where she currently lives because they needed to protect her and the other residents, she replied, "But who is going to protect all the homeless people?" Who indeed? Are we our brother's keeper? My daughter thought so. These are huge issues that need to be carefully considered when deciding what kinds of housing to provide, and they do not have easy answers. Thank you for your time.
I'd like to respond just a little bit. Thank you, Michelle, for a very impassioned your comments, and you've done a great job here tonight. And you touched on something that I don't think I've heard before, at least for a long time. I've heard it from local people who have been victims of that, but I have not heard it from people like yourselves or some of my colleagues. So the obvious that we have heard, number one, we need mental health treatment and facilities and treatment. And ideally that is something that hopefully our state legislators can step up the game and provide that funding and provide the means to do that. We need that severely. It is no secret. Nationwide, documentaries have been done on this. Mental health is a leading cause of that. Number two, drug and alcohol treatment. You touched on it. But another one that you touched on specifically, why I'm speaking, is the drug people who prey on the people who live in these projects, who prey on them for their income at their expense. It just breaks my heart. It absolutely breaks my heart, and it's happening right here in the community that I live in. Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you very much for that, Michelle. Okay, next we will go to hand up is Brooke Rodriguez. Brooke Rodriguez, there we go. If you can go ahead and unmute yourself, there you go. You have 2 minutes with commissioners. Thank you.
Thank you. I work with the Second Home program of Ecumenical Ministries of Oregon. I was hired during this pandemic to develop our program into the rural regions of Clackamas County under funding for the communities of Molalla, Colton, Canby, Estacada, and Sandy, as championed by Oregon State Representative Christine Drazen and others. I work to connect volunteers who are offering shared housing with homeless youth through school district and nonprofit partners, so these youth can have the safety and stability to finish their secondary education. The youth I work with are often independent and have huge ambitions. They just need stable housing. I'm excited about the Metro bill, which will see hugely needed funding for the youth with whom my colleagues work in the Metro region, but I'm anxious to see funding reallocated into the high school students I work with in the rural regions. Whatever new housing units may come, please consider how rural homeless youth might access them so that they can finish high school, their GED, or even community college, and go on to earn a living wage and continue in stable housing. As you likely know, youth of cultural minorities are disproportionately affected by homelessness and all the leading up and fallout relevant factors. So please ensure that these youth minorities especially have extra support in accessing rural housing solutions. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Brooke. Commissioner Schrader, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, I want to thank you for those comments, Brooke, because I share with you and the Representative Drazen the concern for our rural communities, Estacada, Molalla, Sandy. Our rural communities and our rural centers are experiencing houselessness and poverty as well. And it has been my hope that because we have gotten some dollars through the Metro piece, that we can hopefully reallocate other dollars to our rural communities who desperately need the same level of infrastructure in many ways than those of us that are living in the more urban, suburban areas of our county. So I want to thank you for pointing out the rural need, particularly with young people. I suspect it's also across the board with all demographics, and that keeping our fingers crossed, we may actually be working with Estacada to actually look at a mixed-use housing project that is still not made in stone at this point, but it is some preliminary conversations we've been having with some of the elected officials. And I hope that we can spread that model throughout the county to our rural areas. And also, I'm hopeful that we can start looking at USDA funds, the United States Department of Agriculture funding, because they do have funding specifically targeted towards homes for people in rural communities, as well as really addressing the challenge of rural poverty. So thank you for bringing that up. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you for that, Commissioner Schrader, and thank you again for that, Brooke. Next, we will bring over Christina Harris. Christina Harris? Oh, hold on one second. I'm sorry, Christina Harris, there is a problem with your version of Zoom. I've never seen this before. Apparently it's an older version and I cannot allow you to talk. I've never seen that. You might want to be able to, if you have an ability to upgrade. Jill Frankie, we'll bring over Jill Frankie. If you can go ahead and unmute yourself, Jill, and you'll be on for 2 minutes with Clackamas County Commissioners. Thank you very much.
Hello, thank you for the opportunity to be able to participate in this meeting tonight. I am a member of the ASEC Council, and we have been following some of the work that you've been doing with homelessness and possibility of temporary housing. We followed the possible purchase of the hotel in the Milwaukee area, and then we heard about the possibility of the Estacada area. My concern is that when we get away from the metropolitan area, some of the ability to access readily transportation and other services are more available in the metro area than in a rural area. And I would like us to be able to address how services and transportation are going to be accessed when we deal with housing for the homeless in a rural setting. So that's my concern and hope that you might be able to address as you're looking for potential properties or housing that is further out. And so I appreciate your giving me the ability to make these comments this evening.
All right. Thank you very much for that, Jill. We do appreciate your participation and your comment. We have more hands up. I'll switch real quick to another email that we have received from David L. As a member of the construction crew that built the tiny houses for veterans, now located off Jennifer and 115th, I watched the follow-up of that project with great interest. From what I understand, those tiny houses were quickly occupied and many members of that community received the security and support needed to return to independent lives. My hope is that the county can organize that kind of project to provide homeless people with a safe and secure place to live, as well as a place where which supports are provided that will allow disadvantaged individuals to return to successful, independent lives. I would also welcome the opportunity to be involved as a volunteer. It's my belief that providing safe and secure shelter is the first and possibly the most important step in helping people move beyond homelessness. I believe that partnerships between the county and local businesses, as well as volunteers, could immensely impact the human tragedy of homelessness. Again, that is from David L. And again, that is referencing for all the viewers, the link that we put in the chat for the Veterans Village. Great. Okay, and with that, we will go on to Valerie Chapman. Valerie, if you can go ahead and unmute yourself. Great, you will be on here for 2 minutes with Clackamas County Commissioners.
Good evening. I'm Valerie Chapman. I'm on the Oak Grove Community Council. I retired from Portland, where I worked with a church that dealt with folks who are in the homeless community. I worked there for 30 years. And so I'm pretty familiar with the issues that are involved. I wanted to say a couple of things. First of all, I feel heartened by all of the really wonderful ideas that people who are coming and are talking about tonight. It gives me hope. For me, it's a great shift from where we were 30 years ago. So that's a great piece. But I also would just like to encourage county commissioners to recognize that in an emergency, we need more flexibility than we do at other times. And so, if there's a fire or a flood, we find temporary housing. But if we have people who are outdoors, we can't find temporary housing. And I think there's something disconnected there. I remember many years ago, there was a fire at the Oak Hotel in inner Southeast Portland, and it had housed many people who were in single room occupancy. And when it burned, they needed a shelter. And my church provided that shelter. And at the same, the space, the Red Cross came in to run it. And they were able to bring in many people from the street community at the same time who hadn't even lived in that hotel. So I just want to encourage flexibility. I think the tiny houses, the manufactured homes, those are great ideas. And I also want to strongly encourage any kind of flexibility that would help a church, like Oak Grove United Methodist Church, be able to build the kind of housing that they're talking about. I will say this about Oak Grove United Methodist. They are a community player. They have worked hard in the community already, so they are a known entity, and I think people trust what would happen there. So I just want to give them a plug and say that that would be great. But fees, regulations, all of that, let's take the emergency to heart and provide the flexibility and the ability for the task force on homelessness to actually move quickly when options come open. Yeah, that's what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Valerie. Okay, next we are going to go to Cassie Wilson. Cassie Wilson, if you could go ahead and unmute yourself. Thank you very much. You are on with commissioners for 2 minutes.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Cassie Wilson and I live in Boring. I'm a member of Sunrise PDX, a youth-led movement fighting for climate justice. At Sunrise, we recognize how climate change intersects with issues such as housing. I feel fortunate that through the pandemic, wildfires, windstorms, and ice storms, my family and I have a roof over our heads. Unfortunately, that's not the case for many of our neighbors. As the climate crisis worsens, we'll see more people looking for housing as they flee these disasters or lose their homes. As a county, we should be proactive and compassionate towards these needs instead of reactive. Additionally, I'm disabled and there is not enough accessible and affordable housing available to disabled people, especially those of us receiving the unlivable amount of income that SSI provides. Also, I'm 22 years old and most people my age end up living with more people than are even in our immediate families when we move out, just to split the costs of rent. There needs to be more housing available for people at different stages of life at truly affordable price points and throughout the county so people can have some say in where they live and who they live with. I'd also be curious to know what kind of outreach you're doing to folks who might not have been able to access this meeting, such as houseless folks. And I'd also like to think about what shelter looks like year round, not just when those of us with stable roofs over our heads lose power or have to evacuate wildfires. Everyone has the right to a safe place to sleep at night. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for that, Cassie. Okay, and with that, we will go to Anna Hosley. Anna Hosley, you are going to be on. If you can unmute yourself, you have a few minutes, or sorry, 2 minutes with Clackamas County Commissioners.
Hello, Commissioners. This is Pastor Anna Hosley, and I live in the Oak Grove area. I'm the co-pastor leader organizer of Storyline Community, as well as one of the lead organizers of the Clackamas Land and Housing Cohort. This is a collection of faith communities who leverage their land to meet the housing needs of our neighbors. And I think number one is such a fantastic question to ask. Both of these are, and I'm so glad you're asking it and really listening well. I really appreciate the space that you've created. I want to share a statistic that I think really paints a picture of the housing emergency we find ourselves in right now. For every, between 2000 and 2016, for every 100 new households formed in Clackamas County, there were only 78 units of housing built. So that tells you why we have the problem we have, right? And echoing Pastor Heather, we need all kinds of housing all along the spectrum. However, for every 100 families with extremely low incomes in that time period, there were only 22 affordable units available in Clackamas County. So that shortfall is so deeply significant for those in our community who need affordable places to live based on the income they are able to make in our area. I'm thinking right now of a dad in our community with 2 little ones who has a full-time job as a chef and cannot afford even a 1-bedroom apartment in our area for his family in the region where he works. And I can't tell you how common this is. Because of this, again and again, we are losing our neighbors from our community. My daughter is losing her classmates who she loves, and those families are losing the stability of the community they live and work in. And I don't want to continue to lose my friends and neighbors. And I don't want to lose really the beautiful socioeconomic diversity of the place that I've chosen to live in part because of that. So I think that really focusing on increasing that supply of affordable housing is huge. And I have a couple concrete ways to move in this direction that I think are really important. I want to echo what I think it was Ellen said about Housing Bill 2008, and that are really game changers for our faith communities, as they would unlock creative solutions that would, as Heather said, allow us to use our lands for the most pivotal needs for our communities. So if there is any way, as you as commissioners can voice support for those bills, that's going to be really huge for us. And in reference to question 2, I think
Anna, if you can, you've gone over 2 minutes at this point, so if you can end your comments pretty quickly.
Darn it all. Okay, well, one more thought, which is to notice who is not here. To echo Jayraj, we have a housing system built on racist zoning and redlining and racist deeds. So I think really centering BIPOC voices when we look forward about what housing we need to build is crucial. And I'd love to see some listening sessions focused specifically on that.
All right. Thank you very much for that, Anna. Appreciate the comment. Next, we're going to go to, and again, if anybody has a comment that they want to make, we have a little under 30 minutes left. Please go ahead and use the raise hand function on Zoom. We're going to go to Matthew, maybe Nish or Nish. Matthew, go ahead and unmute yourself. And you're on. You have 2 minutes with Clackamas County Commissioners.
Great, thank you, everybody. I think this is a great forum for getting ideas out there. I'm a senior project manager in an architecture and engineering firm, and it's located in Portland, but I live in Damascus, so I'm connected to my community. And my main focus as an architect is affordable housing. And in response to question number one, I think, and it's all about new ideas. There's an organization called Helping Hands that is currently working on converting the Wapato jail up in very, very North Portland, that created, in the span of about 3 months, created a 200-bed emergency shelter, and they're shuttling people from the end of the Max line and getting them jobs at Columbia Sportswear. But it took a lot of people to get involved with that. In response to question number two, I work with several developers that have lots of equity that they want to invest, and it's finding governmental agencies and governmental groups that are willing to partner with them to get through the red tape. Somebody early on mentioned, flexibility in zoning. We have a huge, we have an ever growing amount of defunct retail space, that if that could be converted into affordable housing or into shelters spaces, it would greatly increase the inventory across the city. But it's so many projects get bogged down and delayed in regulations that developers lose their desire to keep pushing it forward. So just a couple ideas and thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Matthew. Appreciate it. Okay. We received another email. This is from Eric. Good evening, commissioners. What steps are going to be taken to ensure community buy-in in creating inclusiveness and equity for those who become houseless? The rural communities rallied around those affected by the summer fires and winter ice storms, but many individuals who will be facing houselessness may be perceived as having brought this on themselves. How do we ensure their dignity and self-worth in this impending crisis? That is from Eric in Malino. Sorry. All right. Let me see. Next, we will go over to the handle is just Jenny. So Jenny, if you can go ahead and unmute yourself. There we go. And you're on for 2 minutes.
Great. Thank you very much. My name is Jenny Franks. I live in Milwaukee. I'm a member of Oak Grove United Methodist Church and a supporter of the Clackamas Land and Housing Commission, which I think has already been spoken of on this call. I just wanted to share with you all that affordable housing and homelessness are issues that are very close to my heart. I have family members who've experienced houselessness and rent insecurity. One family member in particular, who, as a veteran, was able to use temporary veterans housing to transition into permanent stable housing. And that's also been discussed on this call. And I can testify that that kind of housing really transforms people's lives. Once you have a place to stay, that's a game changer. And along with that, having the ability to access the associated social services, also a game changer. So I would also echo what so many people have said. We need all the housing here, really all of it, all the different kinds. And I think that we really need to be open. We are in an emergency situation. People have cited statistics, and we really need to be open to creative solutions, different ways of doing things, recognizing that we've gotten over-regulated, the cart's leading the horse at this point in some cases. And listening and reflecting on everything that's been shared, it's really quite inspirational. And it actually kind of struck me just kind of out of the blue. We have a vaccine. We have 3 vaccines for COVID now, and that seemed impossible a year ago. And if that can be done, then, surely all this good energy and all these ideas and creativity, we can help the people that it just breaks my heart to see them. I go walking on the trolley trail and it just breaks my heart, because I see my brother. I don't see some stranger that I don't know. So I thank you all for your time, and I appreciate your good work. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jenny. An email we have is from, sorry, just want to make sure I didn't miss anybody. An email we have is from Carolyn. Seattle has a program to immediately house the homeless in hotels to combat COVID by offering non-congregate shelter in hotels for up to a year, with social services to enable transition to permanent housing. An emergency grant funds this. Can Clacko obtain such funding?
We are doing that. That's actually, we have, I think, 3 hotels, and I think at our peak we had maybe during the cold weather a couple more. So we currently do that and fund that, and they are actively used.
Okay, excellent.
Yeah, and Dylan, let me add to that. There was an opportunity through the COVID relief dollars for Turnkey, which is a program to purchase hotels. And in Clackamas County, we have looked and evaluated different options, and it's really challenging. I can look to Commissioner Savas for that, but we are continuing that effort, and I really appreciate the comments. So thank you.
Very good. All right, next hand we have up, and there's still time for hands to be raised because we've got a little under 20 minutes left. So go ahead and utilize the raise hand function if you want to pass on a comment. But next hand up is Yvonne Lazarus. Yvonne Lazarus, you have 2 minutes with Clackamas County Commissioners if you want to unmute yourself. There you go.
Okay, you can hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm speaking for the elderly. For 2 years, I've been wanting to move out of the apartment complex that I'm in, which is a good one. And the reason is I'm downsizing or trying to downsize. I can find nothing that is a 1-bedroom, not a thing. I keep thinking 4 people could be living in here. And it's just that I want you to think about seniors since we're living longer, although I've been here a long time and most of the people have died off, which is, and I don't want to move. I don't want to retire. I don't want to go into a retirement center. So that's all I have to say. I'm hoping, and I want something, permanent. And this is a permanent place where I live. I know he rents to Section 8 because some people have come in here. So, and it's a good place. So find me a 1-bedroom and I'll move out and you can move 4 people in. Thank you.
All right, thank you for that comment, Yvonne. Next, we will go to Chris Duncan. Chris Duncan, if you can go ahead and unmute yourself. There we go, and you are on for 2 minutes.
Thank you for the opportunity to comment. I did send written comments earlier in the day, but I don't know that they hit the destination. I was in the field of affordable housing and I retired as the coordinator of homeless services for the state of Alaska. So I have been at this, I was at this for close to 30 years. It started out in public housing. So it is a subject that's very, very near and dear to my heart. When I returned here to Oregon and was dealing with, this is my home state, and was doing elder care, I really appreciated the previous speaker because looking for housing options for my elders as they needed to be relocated from homes they could no longer maintain independently, gave me an opportunity to look at the systems here and the lack thereof. And I've begun to see and feel the same frustrations that I had over 30 years of system observation there. I was very pleased with the tone today, that the focus has not so much been on the persons that are experiencing the results of our systemic failures, but that we are actually looking for some other real solutions. One thing I would want to caution as we look at question number 2, how can Clackamas County work with community business partners and developers? If you incentivize with tax credits, you're going to lose the opportunity to close the gap in operations and services that is so badly needed with affordable housing. Even at the lowest rates, what it takes to operate any kind of substantial number of housing units far exceeds what a person on SSI could afford to contribute. So there has to be money from somewhere to close that gap, to make that property viable. And
Chris,
what
Chris, we reached 2 minutes, so if you can hurry up and wrap up. Please.
So anyway, please weigh in on federal policy, because some of those programs are working against you. So thank you for the opportunity to comment.
Thank you very much for that, Chris.
So, hey, Dylan.
Yep.
Can I just ask for Chris, can we connect offline? You're a wealth of information.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay, very good. Thank you again, Chris, for calling in. Next, we will go to Nate Ember. Nate, you are on with Clackamas County Commissioners, and you have 2 minutes.
Hi, thank you. Yeah, as an architect working in development and affordable housing as a passion, I definitely see one of the biggest opportunities the county can control is to open up zoning, open up, the potential to create viable housing in a lot more places of all different kinds and in all types of zones. And that is critical in order to meet those various income levels. I think that there's pieces the county could take on, similar to the things that the city of Portland has been tackling with the housing continuum project and others, to help educate the community and kind of combat NIMBYism before it happens, so that projects can be implemented much more quickly and with less resistance once people understand, what's needed and really why, and how the folks we're trying to house are really already our neighbors. And deserve just as much, if not more, focus and agency in these conversations as the people who already own housing, or the kind of already housed that we tend to give lots and lots of credit to in community engagement. And then lastly, I would say that I know it's out of your control, but similar to other comments, advocating at the state level to pay for these things using things that are more like a luxury tax, because things like CETs are kind of robbing the housing system in order to fund the housing system, and it is really not a helpful cycle. So we need to be funding these essential services and needs through non-essential services and things. It's the way to create equity, and it's the way to not make what you're trying to do dependent on itself and dependent on market rate housing, which is also needed. So I think those are some immediate action items I could name.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much for that, Nate. We appreciate the comment. We have a little less than 10 minutes left before I'm going to go to commissioners for just some parting thoughts. In the meantime, I do see we have at least one more hand raised. So if you wanted to give a comment, please go ahead and hit the raise hand function now and be sure to get that up in time. Before we do that, I will read one more email that we have received from David in Estacada. I'm on the board of Clackamas Women's Services, and I live in the Fishers Mill area. I'm writing to urge your support for emergency and affordable housing in our county. Affordable, good quality housing is a crucial issue for many CSW clients who are literally fleeing their domestic situation for their lives. In 2009, Oregon's domestic and sexual violence shelters turned away over 8,000 emergency shelter requests due to lack of capacity. Advocates and survivors have been forced to brainstorm short-term solutions, including sleeping on the street and even on max lines. Domestic violence rates have increased alarmingly during the pandemic, with a concomitant increase in the demand for safe and stable housing. Both statewide and national surveys in 2019 identified housing as the greatest unmet need for survivors in both urban and rural areas. The time a survivor attempts to leave a violent relationship is extremely dangerous. Survivors need domestic violence and sexual assault, trauma-informed support and assistance to address shelter and housing needs within the context of a safety plan. For these reasons, I urge the Commission to take bold action to create new housing options for domestic and sexual violence survivors. I chose to read that one, Commissioners, because we have gotten 2 or 3 emails that are similar to it. I wanted to be sure to go ahead and relay that. Alrighty, we have another hand up. It is Janet Michaels. Janet Michaels, you are on if you want to go ahead with 2 minutes for Clackamas County Commissioners.
Hello there, can you hear me?
Yes, please go.
Wonderful. Good evening, Commissioners. I'm a resident of rural Sandy, Oregon. I'm commenting tonight as a community member who is just one paycheck away from homelessness myself. First, I deeply support the comments made tonight from Unite Oregon, Sunrise PDX, and I also support the Housing First model. I'm concerned by lack of access to services to our rural community members. With the wildfires that happened last fall, we proved that we can house people if we choose to. We need to treat this harm affecting our community members as a housing emergency crisis, and we need to address this through multiple pathways. Someone who has been homeless for 20 years and has mental health issues takes longer to stabilize and needs a more intensive level of services. Someone who just lost their job, got evicted, and is economically homeless requires a lighter level of services. They're both important, they're all important, and I want to be sure that we're providing all services. Good data allows us to look at what the situation is and try our best to tailor the social services. The 2019 count provided a total of 1,166 unhoused individuals across the county, and that included 48 in Sandy and 32 in Estacada. Of the total number of people surveyed, 454 were chronically homeless, which refers to unhoused people with disabling conditions who have been homeless continuously for a year or longer. Due to the pandemic, Clackamas County decided to skip the count in 2020, potentially missing many of the numbers who have been pushed out of housing due to lack of income and affordable housing. Today, I read a report of an incident, a police report of an incident in Sandy where a person who was found to have slept overnight in a park was trespassed from all public parks in our city. This does nothing to solve the problem of lack of housing and oftentimes just criminalizes those who are experiencing homelessness. We need to not police, we do not need police harassing those already struggling. What we need are community-based outreach programs that not only provide basic services like medicine, food, socks, social service information, washing services, and COVID vaccines. Lastly, I want to strongly support the comments about who's not in the room that we are talking about. And I too ask that you provide outreach and listening sessions to those affected who might not have access to Zoom. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Janet. Good point at the end. Okay, let me see. I will go ahead and we have one last hand up. And after that, Commissioners, I will turn it to you for any parting comments before we end the night. And that last hand belongs to Brian Shaw. Brian, if you can go ahead and unmute yourself, and you're going to be on with Clackamas County Commissioners. There we go.
All right, Commissioners, I'll make this kind of short because I know you're anxious to get your remarks in here, but I'd like to have an update on the projects, the Clackamas Heights project and the Oregon City View Manor projects. Now that you've got some new funding coming in, is it necessary to sell that one property, the Oregon City View Manor property, which is has been in discussion for quite some time to sell that because you wanted to use that money to for your other housing projects in the county, which I understood. But now that you have this extra money coming in, is it possible to change the direction on that? And it's property you already own. It's you can now build some housing on that now that's needed. So thank you.
Oh, Commissioner Schrader, I'm sorry. Did you have something? Okay. Okay, great. Thank you very much for that, Brian. Okay, and I see no more hands up, which works well since we have just enough time left for commissioners to go ahead and give any comments or thoughts. Would any commissioner like to start?
Colleagues, Commissioner Shaw, would you prefer to go first? I have to.
Go ahead.
Okay. I'm going to be speaking to the Redland CPO tonight at 7, so I'm going to have to hop off. But I just want to thank everybody for calling in. I think that you, at least from my perspective, you are largely, pretty much preaching to the choir here. I think that all of my colleagues feel that way, and my hope is that with the additional dollars that may be infused into our local economy, that housing will be a key component of that. And I also have been trying to work with Estacada Connects on these issues. I'm so glad that we're hearing loud and clear that we need to be working with our rural communities as well as our suburban urban communities. And I looked up a new group I hadn't known really well tonight, and that was the Clackamas Land and Housing Commission. And it seems as if they're very active. And Paul, I think they're in your neck of the woods, and evidently they're going to have a meeting tomorrow night. So I think I'll find out more about that. It looks like it's a coalition of faith community leaders, specifically looking at social justice issues, including housing. So thank all of you, and Commissioner Scholl, thank you for letting me go first. Folks, I'm gonna hop off right now to my second Zoom meeting of the evening. So bye everyone. Love you. Okay.
Thank you, Commissioner Schrader. Commissioner Scholl.
Yes, good evening, and thank you everyone who called in or emailed in. I'm very encouraged with the level of intensity and focus and knowledge and ideas for dealing with this problem of homelessness. And I am going to take these ideas you have, that you presented tonight, for action with my other commissioners. And I hope you stay in touch, because I want to take action and get this problem fixed sooner than later. So thank you again, and stay in touch.
Very good. Thank you, Commissioner Scholl. Commissioner Fisher, would you like to go next?
Yeah, thank you, Dylan. I really appreciate everyone who has taken the time to connect with us. I think I can speak for all of us, and I'll look for some head nods from Commissioner Savas and Commissioner Scholl, that I learned a few things this evening. And it is your stories that make us the most effective leaders that we can be. So I thank you from my heart for taking the time to share with us. And we will be taking this information back, and we will be magnifying your voices to make more effective policy in Clackamas County. So thank you for spending this time with us.
Thank you. Vice Chair Savas.
Yeah, well, thanks. I thank everyone who made comments tonight and who attended and listened in. I really appreciate that. It has been a very tough haul for a number of us who've been on the commission the longest, because we've been facing this problem the longest. In the area that I live, I can see firsthand on a daily basis the impacts. I see the people that are living on the street. I chat with those people that are living on the street, and that even occurred even yesterday. It is sad. I think I'm hoping that the number I'm seeing is wrong, but I'm just going to give you a little tidbit of information. And apparently, it appears that in the Portland metro region, that the vacancy rate for rentals is actually increasing. And what that means basically is there's more units available to be rented, but they are too expensive. They are more expensive than they once were, and that is because of economics. And people are displaced, and it's economic displacement that is really causing a lot of people to either move out of the area or actually, unfortunately, move out of the place they live to the outdoors. And that is terribly, terribly sad. So while, I don't know what kind of glut of inventory it will take, if there ever is an opportunity to increase the number of housing apartments and units, which are really considered more on the lower scale. But we're at an economic time right now where when we build affordable housing, subsidized government housing that's affordable, it is still actually not affordable. And that is a real crying shame. And that is the frustrating element of what we're faced with. We're faced with fixed land cost not fixed land cost, but high land cost. The builders who build it are fixed with increasing prices on materials to build the homes. Labor is going up as well. Everything is going upward when it comes to cost to build housing and so forth. So it's probably the most complex thing I've ever experienced in trying to solve. So I again appreciate all the ideas. When we built the Veterans Village, it was my hope that we could expand that model. And that is the plan, or was the plan. And hopefully we can get some more staff support to do just that. I think that's a great model, and there's other iterations of that we can do that are still affordable. So including manufactured housing, which is awfully affordable. And we just need the space. We need the land. We need the land that's as affordable as possible to make these things happen. So I appreciate all the ideas and would love any input. And we would all love any input you have that you want to send to us via email. So with that, I will conclude my comments. And Dylan, you want to wrap it up for us?
Yes, thank you very much, Vice Chair Savas. My thanks to everyone who called and emailed in tonight, and of course to the Board of County Commissioners. If you're, I wanted to share one last thing. Many of the projects that were discussed tonight, you can find more information about on our website, on the Housing Authority website, which is on the screen. That is at clackamas.us/housing authority. Also, if you are interested in getting on our mailing list for future town halls, at the bottom of any of our web pages, you can go and there is a link right here, get email updates. This will come up and you can sign up for any of the email lists. The Board of County Commissioners lists, the monthly e-newsletter. Those are good ones to sign up for to find out when the next listening session / town hall is going to be. So for all of us here at Clackamas County, have a good night. Thank you for joining us.